The last time I saw my brother Ben, he was trying to cry without making a sound. We were sharing a room, our beds separated by a narrow aisle of worn-out carpet, and I was pretending to be asleep. The hitched, silent sobs were worse than any loud wailing. They were the sound of a soul being torn apart, piece by tiny piece. He was 16. I was 14. The cause of his misery was a girl named Chloe, and the betrayal by his best friend, Mark. Ben and Mark were inseparable. They were the kings of our small-town high school, not because they were bullies, but because they were golden. Star quarterback and star wide receiver. Ben was the quiet, steady hand. Mark was the dazzling smile and the loud laugh. And Chloe, with her fiery red hair and a laugh that could make you feel like you'd just won something, was the prize they'd both quietly coveted. Ben got there first. Their betrayal was a cliché, but clichés are born from truths that repeat themselves. I saw them, you know. One Tuesday after school, behind the bleachers, Mark and Chloe tangled up in each other, his hands in her hair, her face tilted up to his with a devotion I'd only ever seen her show my brother. I froze, my stomach turning to ice. Do I tell him? I was just the kid brother, Liam the shadow. I said nothing. A week later, he found out on his own. A text message left open on Chloe's phone. The fallout was nuclear. Ben confronted them. Mark, with tears in his own eyes, gave some pathetic speech about how it just happened and how he never meant to hurt him. Chloe just looked at the ground. The golden trio was shattered. Ben retreated into a shell of quiet despair. He quit the football team. His grades tanked. He'd lie in his bed at night and I'd listen to those silent sobs, feeling a helpless rage boil inside me. They hadn't just broken his heart, they'd extinguished his light. Then, about 6 months later, Ben started to get better. He began applying to colleges far away. He started running in the mornings. He even smiled again, a small, fragile thing. I thought he was moving on. We never spoke about Mark or Chloe again. They graduated, became a permanent fixture around town, the high school sweethearts who'd built their love on a foundation of betrayal. Ben went to college on the West Coast, built a life, and only came home for holidays. The wound, it seemed, had scarred over. I was wrong, so terribly, profoundly wrong. 20 years later, Ben was a successful software architect. Mark and Chloe were still in our hometown. Mark had used his charm to become a moderately successful real estate developer, and Chloe was a local interior designer. They were the picture of suburban success, a big house, 2 kids, a golden retriever, the perfect life, built on a lie. Ben called me one evening, his voice calm, almost casual. "Liam, you remember Mark?" A chill went down my spine. "Of course I do. He's in a bit of a bind. His company is bidding on a massive, multi-million-dollar contract to redevelop the old industrial park downtown. It would make his career." "Yeah? And?" I couldn't see where this was going. "And," Ben said, a faint, almost imperceptible edge to his voice, "the lead architect on the project is an old fraternity brother of mine. He mentioned it to me. He also mentioned that their entire bidding process is digital, and their security is, well, laughable." The pieces started to click into place with a terrifying finality. "Ben, what are you going to do?" "Me?" he said, the innocence in his voice a carefully crafted lie. "I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to watch. I just thought you'd want to have a front row seat." For the next 3 weeks, it was like watching a master craftsman at work. Ben, from 2,000 miles away, began to weave a web of digital vengeance. He didn't hack their system. He was too smart for that. He created a ghost. Using the architect friend for insider information, he crafted a rival bid from a dummy corporation he'd set up years before. The bid was brilliant, slightly better than Mark's in every conceivable way, but just unrealistic enough to be suspicious if you looked too closely. The night before the final decision, Ben executed his plan. He sent an anonymous email to the head of the development board, tipping them off that Mark E.S. Company had engaged in corporate espionage and had stolen the rival bid A. Hess Designs. The proof was a series of fabricated digital trails, false timestamps on documents, and a few well-placed leaks that pointed directly at Mark. It was a house of cards, but Ben had built it with the patience of a saint and the precision of a surgeon. The day the decision was announced, I drove over to the old neighborhood, a morbid curiosity pulling me there. I parked across the street from Mark and Chloe S. house just as Mark S. car screeched into the driveway. He stumbled out, his face ashen. Chloe came running out the front door. "What's wrong?" she cried. "They pulled the contract," he yelled, his voice cracking. "They're accusing me of industrial espionage. They said they have proof. They're talking about a lawsuit. Everything. It's all gone." I watched from my car, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was my brother's revenge. Not a punch, not a shouting match. A ruin. He had waited 2 decades for the perfect moment to strike, not at their hearts, but at the foundation of the perfect life they had built without him. My phone buzzed. It was Ben. "You watching?" he asked, his voice still calm, but I could hear the raw, 20-year-old pain simmering just beneath the surface. "Ben, this is too much," I whispered, horrified and awestruck in equal measure. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but as sharp as a razor. "Liam, all those years ago, you heard me crying at night, didn't you?" The breath caught in my throat. He knew. He'd always known I'd known. "Yes," I managed. "I wasn't just crying for a girl or a lost friend," he said, each word measured and heavy. "I was crying because they made me feel worthless. They made me feel like I was nothing. So I decided that someday, when they had everything they ever wanted, I would show them exactly what nothing feels like." He hung up. I sat in my car, watching Mark sink to his knees on his perfectly manicured lawn, Chloe hovering over him, their world collapsing in a silent, suburban apocalypse. The silent sobs from the next bed over had finally found their voice, and it was the sound of a life shattering into a million pieces. My brother didn't just get even. He got ahead, and then he quietly, methodically, burned their world to the ground. The quiet ones, they're the ones you have to watch.